The Nickelodeon Slimecast Podcast is brought to you by the reopened Nickelodeon Studios in Orlando, Florida Facebook page, and is produced by Patricia Miranda from oldschoollane.blogspot.com. Welcome to another episode of the Nickelodeon Slimecast Podcast. I'm Patricia, and I'm here with Em and James.
Here.
And we have ourselves a very special guest. We have cartoon reviewer, opera reviewer, concert reviewer, pretty much everything but the kitchen sink. We have Antoni Garcia. So welcome, Antoni.
Hey there, everybody.
So today, we're going to be discussing about the last Nicktoon of our theme Nicktoon month, which is about weeks behind. I'm completely sorry about that because I've been going through a lot of personal issues, but you're not here to listen about that. You're here to listen to about Ren Stimpy. And right before we dive into our discussion, why don't you guys discuss about your earliest memory of Ren Stimpy? Antoni, since you're our special guest, why don't you start?
Well, just like with my experiences with Rugrats, Hey Arnold, and all the other Nicktoons, especially the Nickcoms like Kenan and Kel, I first started watching Ren and Stimpy in my paternal grandma's house when I was about 7 years old. And I was sort of really interested in this show because before getting myself into Ren and Stimpy, as I said before, I first watched Rugrats and Rocko's Modern Life, and I seem to notice some similarities between Rocko and Ren and Stimpy because of the style of humor they have and also all the visual gags. And I could definitely tell that Rocko definitely took a lot of lessons from Ren and Stimpy and probably a lot of other shows in general.
All right, awesome. What about you, James?
Oh, I discovered Ren and Stimpy quite a bit ago when I was a kid. I remember that it was on Nicktoons. I didn't get into it at first. I watched one of the games episodes and I felt like it was and it didn't really catch my interest. But when I started watching the Spunko episodes when they started airing, I realised how great it was, and I loved its weird, surreal type of humor, and it's inspired me humor-wise, and that's how I fell in love with the show.
All right, cool. As for me, I first got introduced to Ren and Stimpy when it first came out. I was about 5 years old in 1991, and I remember seeing the episodes, and I was just, like, so mesmerized. It was something that I've never seen before. Just a cartoon that just kind of sucked you into its strangeness, and it got me pretty much hooked ever since. Well, I'm sure that when we discuss more later on about our favorite episodes and later seasons and whatnot, I have some, confession time to do. But so let's discuss about some of the earlier seasons, around the Spunko era, as they say. So what were your first impressions when watching it again more recently? Because James and I, we marathoned through Ren and Stimpy to get prepared for this, and on my personal YouTube channel, I did my top 10 Ren and Stimpy episodes. So, Antoni, what about you? What were your experiences of rewatching the show when you did your videos on it?
Well, I found out that the Spunko episodes really held up pretty well. And I also found out that with the earlier Spunko episodes, they seemed to get away with a lot more than a lot of the later episodes. Mostly because John K. was on the helm. But despite those episodes being, in my opinion, a lot better than the later ones, he's been kind of infamous for being a bit hard to work with. But despite that, it was a very well done season. Well, basically seasons 1 and 2. And I could definitely remember the Royal Canadian Kilted Yaks, man. That was just a hell load of fun. Just by watching the episode, I knew it had to be on my top 25 favorite Ren and Stimpy episodes. And if you've watched my top 25 favorite Ren and Stimpy episodes, then Son of Stimpy is number 1, and I placed Stimpy's Inventions on number 2. So, yeah, that's just basically it.
All right. How about you, James?
I loved it as much as I did when it first came out, if not more so. My appreciation for the show has grown and grown and grown over the years, to the point of where if I ever become an animator, I just want to be able to make cartoons as creative as Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah, as for me, when rewatching the show again, definitely to prepare for the 3 Original Nicktoons month and for these podcasts, I noticed about how kind of insane it was. Just really, really creative, but really insane. I mean, their plots were very simple, but the execution of it was just very shocking. Like, you know, episodes like Space Madness, in which, you know, it's about, Ren and Stimpy going to space, but then you have Ren and Stimpy going on a 6-year off-duty break, and then you see the insanity that Ren builds up when he's doing absolutely nothing, and then, you know, when he's quoting the lines when he's floating up in the bathtub, and he's, you know, saying the line, "We're not hitchhiking anymore, we're riding." I actually found out that was from a movie called Champion, starring Kirk Douglas, where he's a boxer, and he starts becoming really famous, and he lets the power overrun his mind. And, you know, also the other Commander Hoek and Cadet Stimpy episodes, such as Marooned and Black Hole, in which, you know, Ren and Stimpy get trapped in either a different planet or in a black hole, and then strange things happen to them the longer that they stay. And also, you know, like Big Baby Scam, and just a whole bunch of things in which it's, you know, it starts off like those simple premises, like, you know, I just find it hilarious when looking at, you know, The Boy Who Cried Rat, in which, you know, Ren is basically dressing up like Mickey Mouse, and they're playing the episode off like it's a Tom and Jerry cartoon. Episodes like Stimpy's Invention, in which, you know, Stimpy just wants to invent something, and then Ren gets angrier and angrier the more the invention kind of backfires on him. So, and then eventually he would make the happy helmet, and then Ren would just be so overly happy. It would just be almost to the point of insanity. But yeah, rewatching the show again, it's like, I mean, we've already discussed about this briefly in the Pete and Pete podcast, but I personally felt that the show didn't get like really, really crazy. Like, oh, the reputation says that Ren and Stimpy, that Pete and Pete gets crazy, until at least season 2. That's when I felt that the episodes started to be getting a lot more surreal. But no, in season 1, Ren and Stimpy, it gets insane right away. Like, you know, the pilot episode in which they ended up in the dog pound, and, you know, Ren and Stimpy...
The art got better during the second season.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. The art did get a lot better, in which, you know, I guess because, you know, Carbuncle Cartoons helped out a lot with the first season, and then as time went on, they started getting more animators, and they started... having a different studio to help them out with their animation, and there was a lot more detail to the cartoons. Like, John Kay, it has been said in many interviews, including in Sick Little Monkeys, the unauthorized Ren and Stimpy story, that he was a massive perfectionist, and, you know, almost to the point that the animators and the artists would say that he was extremely harsh. Like, making sure that the lip sync was perfect, making sure that the backgrounds were up to his standards, making, if there was something that he didn't like, he would just, you know, tear up the paper and then just give a note saying about all the things that they did wrong, and then he would just say, cordially your friend John K. It's kind of like somebody ripping off a Band-Aid from your skin, you feeling the raw pain, but then at the same time they say, oh, well, I'm just going to give you a lollipop. The reputation of John K. was really, really harsh. I found a video clip on E-Animation where John K. was interviewed and discussing about the behind-the-scenes stuff on Ren and Stimpy, and he's eyeing a lot of his animators, and he's eyeing his artists and how they draw the pictures and how they do the storyboard arts and all that stuff. And it's this was at a time around the early 90s in which, John K.'s standards of how to do cartoons were pretty much non-existent. You did a lot of cartoons. I mean, you had the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, you had the Filmation cartoons, in which they were outsourced, they were stiff, they were choppy, and they were all based off of toys, and they were based off of action figures. Basically, they were 30-minute toy commercials. But John K. wanted to do something completely different, and, because of him working alongside with Ralph Bakshi to do the Mighty Mouse cartoon, and then eventually John K. left to do Spunko, and then he did Beanie and Cecil, and then that show didn't work out, and so he did Ren and Stimpy. And, he was able to take a lot of what he learned from watching the Looney Tunes cartoons, watching Hanna-Barbera cartoons, and watching the MGM cartoons, and just basically just putting it out there. And it became the massive starting point of animation that, for a lot of us, we kind of take for granted.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I look back at a lot of the episodes from Ren and Stimpy, there is a certain combination of all the old cartoons like Tom and Jerry, Looney Tunes, and there's a certain style, especially with the use of classical music, especially the likes of my personal favorites being some from the Flower Duet, some being from the Flower Duet from Leo Delibes' Lakme, and there's an episode in which Ren gets a horrible cold, and he looks very ill until he finds out that it was Stimpy's hair that has made him ill. And I also noticed that there are also moments in which some of my favorite Rossini opera overtures were played, like The Barber of Seville, known in Italian as Il Barbiere di Siviglia, and of course the Thieving Magpies overture, or known in Italian as La Gazza Ladra, which I found very interesting. And even Cavalry from Franz von Suppé.
Yeah, the music of Ren and Stimpy has become iconic in our pop culture, in which it does take a lot of classical music and able to showcase it to a new generation of kids, similar to what Fantasia did in the 40s. But at the same time, it was able to put in some brand new music, making it sound like it does sound from the 1950s almost. And, even still to this day, people still use Ren and Stimpy music as background music, whether they're doing YouTube videos or they're doing comedy skits or whatever. It just becomes that much of a staple that people still use Ren and Stimpy music for pretty much anything.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's quite a lot of fun to listen to as well. And I remember the tune that goes... It was really, really interesting to listen to that too, and it's pretty sweet as well.
Yeah, definitely. And there was also this really awesome video that I highly recommend that you check it out, done by the Nerd Writer, where he discusses about... the video is called Ren and Stimpy Never Use the Same Face Twice. And there was this really excellent clip of him discussing about, how every time that you pause a moment on Ren and Stimpy, even for a second, the facial expressions are completely different. For example, in the scene in which Ren is trapped in the Stay Put socks, and then Stimpy walks up to him, the expressions of Ren are completely different. His eyes are bugged out, he's showing his teeth more, his body is twitched around and twisted, and he's pulling up to Stimpy wanting to choke him, and then, Stimpy slowly walks up to him and is like, hey, what's the matter, Ren? And then you just kind of see everything just flow so naturally. I mean, in a time in which, the 80s, going back to the 80s cartoons again, and I'm not bashing the 80s cartoons, I still have a soft spot for them, but let's be honest, I mean, a lot of them weren't that great, but the point is that, looking back on the animation, I mean, Hanna-Barbera and Filmation were known for reusing animation so that they can be able to save time, save money, and can be able to produce stuff really quickly. But with Ren and Stimpy, it's like John K. wasn't all about that. He was all about taking his time so that the cartoon can look extremely expressive. And Stimpy's invention is a prime example on that, in which it took an entire year to do it. I mean, even John K. was complaining about that the wallpaper and the wrapping paper that Ren would use to open up the gift at the Stay Put Socks wasn't up to his standards with the coloring. That's how much detail that John K. was known for.
That's the price artists pay to make it big.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that price would be really a big one for John K. to pay off later, but we'll discuss about that.
Some of the post-John K. episodes that I like, but the one that really stood out to me was none other than Hermit Ren. I thought that was a really, really, one of the greatest episodes post-John K. or post-Funko, and I found it really interesting because it was really, really creepy, especially when you go to the parts where Ren ends up being a hermit, and he meets all his, three different sides. The one that he's angry, the one where he's ignorant, and the other one that he's scared. I thought it was really, really cool. And that mummified figure, oh, wow. I thought, it's just really cool. I still remember that episode vividly when I was about 7 years old, and I still enjoy it to this very day.
Yeah, and also, in Sick Little Monkey, Stad was mentioning about that episode, in particular, Hermit Ren, about it shows how Ren is such a very versatile character. You can put him by himself, and he'll be entertaining. He doesn't need somebody like Stimpy to help him out with, carrying out an episode. It shows about how much Ren can be able to just carry an episode by himself. And, even with all of his personalities, Ren is able to stick out a lot more.
Exactly. Yeah, Ren may not be my most favorite character or a character that anyone can look up to, but I think if you look at him in terms of his entertainment level, his whole psychosis and his whole over-the-top nature, especially when he gets very violent, you can't help but feel fascinated by this character, especially in that scene with Sven Hoek. I mean, you guys know the one where he threatens to really maul off Stimpy and Sven, and that other well-known scene with Stimpy's fan club where Ren goes all Lady Macbeth with his out damn spot-like monologue. I thought it was basically some of his basic highlights.
Yeah, I mean, going into the deleted scene of Sven Hoek, in which he goes all Jeffrey Dahmer, wanting to rip off limbs, and wanting to beat them until they fall, and they were gonna like it.
Oh, jeez, yeah. Messed up guy.
Yeah, he is messed up.
But I guess that's why I kind of like him, because, that certain characters from any installment, whether it be anime or film, like the ones that definitely stand out to me despite their psychosis would be like Alex from A Clockwork Orange, Annie Wilkes from Misery, and let me see, maybe to some extent Bill Sykes from Oliver, but I think Ren is a lot more manic than Bill Sykes.
Yeah, I mean, even going into, like, anime, going into, I mean, for some reason, everybody just loves the, dark characters who are going through, like, a messed up past. I mean, why do you think for a long time everybody was getting into Sasuke from Naruto, or Uryu from Bleach, or Light from Death Note, in which their stuff is so screwed up. And, Light from Death Note, for example, he wants to basically, kill all the murderers or all the people from prison so he can be able to have peace in the world, but at the same time he goes way too far and he wants to be God.
Oh, yeah. Megalomaniac.
Exactly, yeah. Anyway, but, I mean, even still to this day, jerkish characters have started to become a lot more relatable. I mean, they're not, like, overly psychotic with what Ren did, but it seems that nowadays they're starting to put a little bit more of a human touch to them. Like, more recently, we've seen, like, Dan from Dan Versus, or BoJack Horseman, and,
yes.
And in which...
I feel like that's heavily thanks to Phineas and Ferb, because that show mostly, for the most part, tended to avoid mean-spirited humour and even made Doofenshmirtz relatable in some way. And I think that's pretty much transcended itself into other modern cartoons and pretty much evaporated the more jerk-like characters that basically don't have any redeemable factors.
Right. Trust me, there is a fine line between, like, likable jerks and then intolerable jerks. Like, even Ren has had his soft moments. Like, in Nurse Stimpy, when Ren is severely ill and Stimpy approaches him, giving him his coffee and his newspaper so he can read in his bed, and then Ren says, God bless you, Stimpy, I'm sorry that I'm all the time mean to you. And then with Stimpy's fan club, in which Ren becomes overly jealous, but the reason why is because he never received a single fan letter from any of his fans, which I actually received a comment from someone saying, like, ever since that episode aired, there were actually people sending in fan letters for Ren, and I'm like, oh, really? That's what happened? If that's the case, then that's really sweet. There's lots of examples on that, and I guess we can, talk about Stimpy now. Stimpy is, your stereotypical dumb character, but he's just so lovable that you just can't help but be attached to him, and especially with Billy West's performance, who is amazing.
Hey, Billy West isn't known as one of the many gentlemen with the title Man of 1,000 Voices for nothing. I mean, the fact that he could go from voicing Stimpy and even to Ren in the much later seasons, and then later on to voicing Fry from Futurama and a myriad of other characters, that is just how grand this guy is.
And not to mention that, he voiced Ren, Stimpy, and Doug around the same time.
Oh, and don't forget Roger Klotz.
Oh, that's right, yes. Roger Klotz as well. So that's 4 characters of the Nicktoons around the same time.
Stimpy also has a... Stimpy also has a second voice actor, Eric Bowser.
You know what? For the sake
of the Ren and Stimpy adult party cartoon, do not remind me about it. I made a mega rant about that thing,
and so did we. So please go check out both Antoni's discussion about adult party cartoon and check out our discussion of adult party cartoon and Nick's Whistle too. We're not going to be talking about that.
Do you want to know what Eric Bowser actually said about Billy West?
Oh, please tell us.
That he is the real voice of Stimpy, and that he was just filling in for Billy.
Well, I mean, it's really admirable that Eric was able to do what he needed to do, but, Billy West refused to do Ren and Stimpy. He refused to work with John Kay again. In fact, there's that really awkward interview that Howard Stern did back in 95, in which, for those who don't know, Billy West was also in the Howard Stern show, and, they did a lot of radio, and they did interviews and stuff like that. There was one moment in which Howard Stern invited John Kay, and Billy West didn't know about it, and they had the most awkward interview ever, and it did not go very well. Oh man, that was so painful to watch at points.
Yeah. I could imagine.
Is it me or did John Kay seem calm throughout that whole...
Well, I mean, John Kay probably didn't even know, the way he treated his animators and his artists. I cannot even tell you about what he did to his voice actors. Like, I've already mentioned this before, but in the book, it was describing about how John Kay told Billy West about he had to scream a lot. And, at points in which Billy West felt like he was just abused with how much he had to scream and yell, and then John Kay would basically just say, you're almost there, or 9 out of 10 or something. And I think it was even one point in which he pushed Michael Pataki, the voice of George Liquor, up to the point in which he was screaming so much he was like right on his face and he was coming out like sweating. So
oh man.
Yeah, it was just crazy.
But did Cheryl Chase mention anything about how her experiences were with John Kay? Because she also worked in that show, too.
Yes, that's right.
There's a lot of the miscellaneous female characters.
Yeah, pretty much. She voiced almost every single female character in the original Ren and Stimpy, and she came back for Adult Party cartoon. Yes, Cheryl Chase was talking about her experiences with working at Spumco, because she was John Kay's secretary at Spumco, and, then she would be working alongside with him to do all the female voices for both the Ren and Stimpy cartoons and then for the shorts that they used to do, like for advertising some fake products or something.
All while balancing the likes of Angelica Pickles.
Oh, lovely. Man. Can you imagine Cheryl Chase working with a crazy guy like John Kay and then having to go work for, Klasky Chuba to do Rugrats, voicing one of the craziest, meanest, brattiest characters in animation history?
God bless her soul.
Oh, God, yeah. But still, going back to Stimpy, on that tangent, exactly. Oh my God. So, Stimpy, yeah, I mean, Stimpy is pretty dumb, and he does get very messy at points with coughing up all his hairballs, and his just way of speaking is just kind of odd, but the way that Stimpy is presented in the show is just a lot of fun, and he gets into some really crazy moments, but at the same time, you do feel for the character. I mean, even though that he doesn't really care about Ren constantly abusing him because he doesn't know any better, but, he's just always so optimistic and loyal to him. It's just wonderful to see.
I mean, Stimpy is definitely one of my most favorite lovable idiot characters. I mean, there are tons of other characters like him, but I think what makes Stimpy kind of stand out is that you get to see that juxtaposition of how stupid and dumb he can be, but at the same time, he's very eloquent. And he also has his sections, Ask Dr. Stupid. It's one of my favorite sections ever.
Yeah, it's great. It's a lot of fun, and not to mention that with Stimpy, there's a lot of episodes that has, just as much as his title as Ren's, and a lot of them are some of the best episodes of the series. Stimpy's Invention, Stimpy's Fan Club, Stimpy's Cartoon Show.
Son of Stimpy.
Son of Stimpy, yeah. A lot of them are, great.
That was a tearjerker.
Yeah, it's a very odd Christmas special. I mean, given the fact that only halfway it does turn into a Christmas special, but yeah, you really do feel for the guy.
I even did a tribute video last Christmas about it, talking about what I liked about it as well.
Stimpy is one of those characters that a lot of people really gravitated towards, and and I believe it's like one of Billy West's favorite character that he ever performed as.
Exactly.
Anyway, so going into discussing about those main characters, who are your favorite side characters?
Mr. Horse.
No, sir, I don't like it.
Yes, exactly.
That's a poor impression of him, by the way.
No, sir, I don't like it. I also love Muddy Mud Skipper, Powdered Toast Man, and oh dear, all I remember is that there was that Sal salesman guy.
Oh, the salesman who's actually the announcer from all the Commander Hoek and Cadet Stimpy episodes, yeah.
Spaceman is, oh, God. He's just so over the top and so entertaining in his own way.
Will he succumb to push the big, shiny red button? The jolly candy-like button. Will he hold out, folks? Can he hold out? No, I can't!
Jesus Christ, that was just hilarious.
I'm not cold, that's why, it sounded a bit croaky.
Oh, dear. Especially that old man. Oh, yeah.
Old man hunger. Oh, my God! I remember the episode, the Great Outdoors, in which when Ren and Stimpy go skinny dipping, and you see this guy coming in, he has a Band-Aid over his butt cheeks, and then he just jumps in, and he's like, how you guys doing? It's a beautiful day, isn't it? It's so wonderful to see a whole bunch of other guys, feeling comfortable with their nakedity like me. And that's just so creepy. And then, that episode, where it's Ren and Stimpy go over to the dog pound, and then they're talking about, like, old man hunger was biting in their bellies. It's like, he was literally biting their stomachs. It's like, that's creepy, man. And then, Big Baby Scam, in which,
Yes, I love those two baby characters, especially the ending. That is one of my biggest highlights.
I mean, the babies, you would expect them to see, they're just like, they're cute little babies, and they're completely harmless, and then all of a sudden they just turn into, like, these thugs, and they wear these pork pie hats, and they go over to the races to bid on the horses. And then you have the baby who's like this complete bully, and he beats up Ren, punching him 50 times in the stomach.
Even though Ren needed money in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
That was just the biggest highlight of that episode. Ren being beaten the shit out of by, I think it was the brown-haired baby.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah. Because the blonde baby was holding Ren so that the brown-haired baby can punch him.
Holding that sweet little look. And then the brown-haired baby has this mean look at Ren and just beats him up. Stimpy looks on. And poor Ren. He just screams for help.
Yeah, exactly. And, another one that was only in a handful of episodes, Wilbur Cobb. What a strange character he was.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I mean, he's supposed to be like the granddaddy of animation, and yet at the same time, he's just saying a whole bunch of nonsensical comments about everything, and his body's completely falling apart. Like, his ear is held together by bubble gum. Both of his arms rip out of his sockets when he, gets up from his chair. And a crab goes into his ear when he's talking on the phone, but it's actually a shell. And oh, geez, like, all the comments, all the stuff that he was saying is just so weird. Like, the walls have teeth. Us Italians have to stick together, Oh, geez, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then, then there was the handful of episodes in which he was in, where he's, like, a minor character, like, where apparently, like, what was it? Like, he was eating birdseed or something, or whatever. But yeah, that character was also really odd. And of course, we cannot talk about, like, the odd characters without mentioning George Liquor.
Oh, yes. I was about to get to him as well. I also kind of like that character, too. I mean, he comes off as this tough-talking, affluent, rich guy who pretty much tries to lay down the law. And also, the other side character I also like is Antoni and his father as well.
Yeah, to be fair, I don't know, but when I watched A Visit to Antoni and I saw his father, the way he's animated is crazy, but I felt like his performance just wasn't there, Okay. It was crazy, but I just feel like he could have been pushed a little bit more into insanity. Mm-hmm. I mean, in fact, I thought that the bully character was more insane than the father was. I mean, especially in the scene in which he's picked up by his dad and they're both smoking cigars.
You mean Victor?
Yeah, Victor, exactly. And of
I've
course,
been watching that episode ironically yesterday.
Oh, really? Cool. Yeah, I thought that character was, like, insane. And, of course, Anthony kind of looks like Sherman from Peabody and Sherman.
I agree.
Oh, and also the Lummoxes.
Oh, yeah.
Jimmy Lummox as well. Oh, dear.
Oh, yeah. It's funny how Ren and Stimpy, think of really overweight, hairy human beings as, like, rare endangered species.
Well, I guess it does make sense because in the real world, we think of animals that way. Well, some animals, not all animals. So it's the role reversal in Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of dinosaurs, in which the dinosaurs are like the really intelligent creatures, while cavemen are complete morons. Anyway, so yeah, Jimmy Lummox is very odd, and that episode was also really weird too. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the side characters had to be just as insane as Ren and Stimpy because of the world that they're in and everything that's being played around them. It's just, you just kind of see it, but even though it's strange, you're just really glued to it. You're so fascinated by it because it's something that was not like any other show at the time. I mean, this was when animation was starting to slowly pick itself up after the huge success of The Simpsons, and then Disney was starting to get back itself again with Roger Rabbit and Little Mermaid. So this was kind of like our experience of the...
Don't forget Don Bluth and Land Before Time and American Tail and All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
That Secret of Nim.
Absolutely, I agree. And, just watching all those combined, and then eventually when Ren and Stimpy came out, being something completely different that none of the other properties were doing, it just really made it a huge standout. And I'm sure we'll discuss in the end about all the Ren and Stimpy clones and ripoffs, but yeah.
Cow and Chicken,
Two Stupid Dogs, Schnookums and Meat.
Oh dear, Schnookums and Meat.
Yeah.
Cow and Chicken. But before I got introduced to Ren and Stimpy, I was watching Cow and Chicken. So that was very much as I would quote it, one of the Ren and Stimpy ripoffs I first saw when I was about 6 or 7.
By the way, John Kay and Dave Face. Is that how you say it?
I think it's Face. I don't know. I don't have a clue.
The Germans pronounce it as Face.
Dave Face. They're actually friends, and John Kay actually enjoys Cow and Chicken.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I mean, Cow and Chicken is kind of insane in its own way. Like with the red guy, and the pilot of Cow and Chicken is the one that I remember because I saw that as a kid, where a chicken is smoking cigarettes. And, you have the introduction of Super Cow and all the songs that are sung in Cow and Chicken, like Sail Cat and The Ugliest Weenie, all by Bill Burnett, nonetheless. Yes, the co-creator of Chalk Zone.
I actually first got into Cow and Chicken when I was 6, before getting to Ren and Stimpy, so there we go. There was a whole pattern.
Yeah, and, that pattern was pretty much carried throughout the 90s. I even stated this, that in the early 90s, you were either one of 3 shows. You try to be like The Simpsons, in which you try to make an adult sitcom like The Critic or Duckman. You try to be like Batman the Animated Series and do a whole bunch of superhero shows like Spider-Man the Animated Series or X-Men the Animated Series. Or you try to be like Ren and Stimpy, in which you're making like a whole bunch of shows that had a lot of gross-out humor. Some of them worked out well, like Our Real Monsters and Rocko's Modern Life and, Cow and Chicken. And then others just didn't, like Schnookums and Meat and... and a whole bunch of others.
Brothers Flub.
Oh no! Yes, the Brothers Flub. I want to kill.
Cat Dog as well.
Cat Dog, yeah. I mean, Cat Dog, it felt like it was trying to be like Ren and Stimpy, Rocko's Modern Life, Angry Beavers, and pretty much every single show like that, and it just, it just basically tried to be like those. But yeah, that and Brothers Flub and Space Goofs and
But Ugly Martian.
Oh yeah. But Ugly Martians and I'm sure there's a lot of other shows that we can talk about, but those are the ones that I can think of. But yeah, Ren and Stimpy was such a trailblazer that when it reran on MTV, it got a bigger audience to Nickelodeon, and Ren and Stimpy was it got more ratings than Rugrats and Doug combined. It was that huge of a phenomenon. In a time in which before Adult Swim existed, college students were watching Ren and Stimpy.
That would change later on when Rugrats would actually eclipse Ren and Stimpy in the ratings around 94.
Well, it made sense, of course, because, I guess now we can finally get up to the point that it still kind of makes me sad. Let's get into the discussion of the later seasons. So, because of a whole bunch of reasons, from not meeting up with the deadlines and John Kay having fights with a lot of the people working on Nickelodeon and so on and so forth, John Kay was fired from Nickelodeon, and eventually Games Animation took over, and...
Patricia.
Yeah.
According to John Kay, he wasn't fired. It's just that Nickelodeon started a new studio and wanted to basically take over the show and offered him a position of creative consultant, and he refused and he left.
Yeah, there's been a lot. That whole information has been really up and down, whether John Kay doesn't want to admit that he was fired or whatever, but it's more explained in Sick Little Monkeys and in Slime, the Oral History of Nickelodeon's Golden Age, so you can go check that out and come up with your own conclusions. But yeah, so the Games Animation took over, and Bob Camp was a new showrunner, and the later... I still would defend Season 3. I mean, a lot of my favorite episodes are in Season 3, but Season 4 and 5, I cannot defend at all for the life of me. I remember when I was a kid, and I would watch a lot of the later season episodes, and I was just so disappointed in them. The episode of Egg Yokio was one of my least favorite episodes that I would watch as a kid because of how just the tone and the execution of it was just awful. Like the earlier seasons in which they try to do the fairy tales, like, Ren Hoek and the Littlest Giant, those were great. But then when they try to do Pinocchio, and the way that it ended with, Stimpy eating his own son was, really off-putting to me.
Yeah, same here. I remember that episode and feeling cold after I finished watching it, and I realized Ren and Stimpy was starting to go down a dark path. Sorry, I've just got a bit of a cold, so I'm stammering a bit.
That's all right. What about you, Antoni?
Well, for me, I think the only episode I could definitely defend... Actually, there are just certain episodes that I could definitely defend, like that episode with Ren and Stimpy finding treasure in the head of Abe Lincoln.
Yeah, and Abe Divided. Yeah, that's a great episode.
Yeah, and Abe Divided. Yes, I love that. I loved Hermit Ren. It's my absolute favorite. I love the Untamed World episode with the Lumexes. And for some reason, I also liked Aloha Hoek, but because of one person, and that was Dom DeLuise as the Big Kahuna. Now, I'm a big fan of Dom DeLuise, and yes, I've kind of heard about this guy by a fate, because I also, once upon a time, had a Goldilocks book as a kid, and it was stated that was retold by Dom DeLuise. And when I heard his voice as the Big Kahuna, that was my first step into knowing how much of a versatile and very interesting actor and voice actor he is. And when I heard his works as Tiger from American Tail, and maybe just a little bit of Stanley from A Troll in Central Park, did I get myself very interested in Dom DeLuise.
Yeah, Dom DeLuise worked with Don Bluth throughout the 80s and 90s, not only with Tiger, but Jeremy and Secret of Nim, and Itchy from All Dogs Go to Heaven. So yeah, I mean, he basically did a lot of voice acting around that time. And it's such a shame that, he passed away when he did.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were some episodes of seasons 4 and 5 that were okay, but a lot of them just felt really stale for me.
I feel like they were trying to imitate the first two seasons, but couldn't quite get a hang of what made them so great in the first place. And the one missing ingredient, John Kay.
Yeah, it definitely kind of reminded me around the 70s and 80s in which, a lot of the people who are working at Disney were kind of thinking, what would Walt do? What kind of movies and what kind of direction would Walt want to do? And they tried experimenting with a whole bunch of the movies and the cartoons that they did, and a lot of them just didn't really meet up to fans' expectations. And that's what happened during the dark days, in which they tried so hard to do a lot of things that they felt that Walt would do, and it just basically just fell apart. They should have thought and said, what did we want to present that we felt was entertaining for everyone? And I get what they were trying to do. They were trying to, push Ren and Stimpy into a different direction of making it more story-driven and making it more insane and making it more random. But I felt, in my opinion, is that, I feel that that's what people who try to copy Ren and Stimpy think what Ren and Stimpy is. I feel that the Ren and Stimpy show is about, on the surface, it shows a lot of crazy random moments, and it does have a lot of gross-out humor. But I think because of the detailed presentation and because of the way that the voice actors are able to portray in all the situations that they get themselves into, it just becomes a really fascinating experience. And I felt that the later seasons missed that.
Same here.
Yeah. I still appreciate the first two seasons and maybe to some extent season 3 and season 4, but the first two seasons where John Kay was on the helm definitely have left a stronger impression on me, mostly because they really knew how to really go in with their creativity, and they were not afraid to really delve into certain things, and they just had a lot of fun despite all the behind-the-scenes drama.
Of all the people that I've interviewed over the years, there can be a lot of dramatic moments that they do not want you to know about.
Exactly.
It's shocking. That interview that I did with Paul Germain, it was kind of really surprising to me. The interview that I had with Mitchell Kriegman talking about, when they were doing the Clarissa Now pilot, about how the director didn't like Melissa Joan Hart. That was kind of surprising to me. And
ouch.
Yeah, I know. And DJ McHale wanting to do the Are You Afraid of the Dark movie, but Nickelodeon wouldn't allow them because they thought it was too scary for kids.
Hey Arnold is definitely one big example.
Yeah, it's funny because, Craig Bartlett actually directed a few episodes of Ren and Stimpy.
The post-Bunko era.
Yes.
Wow.
So yeah, I was actually interested when looking at that. It's Craig Bartlett actually directed a few Ren and Stimpy episodes. But then again, a lot of people who worked on Ren and Stimpy went off to work on other Nickelodeon shows. Like Mitchell Kriegman worked on Ren and Stimpy, and then eventually he was replaced by Will McRobb, the co-creator of Pete and Pete. And, a lot of the people who worked on Ren and Stimpy also worked on SpongeBob, like Vince Waller, Richard Purcell, and plenty of other people, and Bob Camp. I believe Bob Camp worked on SpongeBob, James?
Yep, he was. He did a couple of episodes, I think.
Mm-hmm. So you get to see, when you look back on all the names in the title, in the credits, about all the people that worked on Ren and Stimpy, you'd be surprised on how many people would later on work on all the other shows.
Oh yes, exactly.
And what was interesting is I found an interview with Vincent Waller that said that if he was asked to continue with the. Hold on, let me get the article now.
Sure, I'll let you do that. As time went on, when I was looking into the later seasons of Ren and Stimpy, I was reminded about how disappointed I was when rewatching it again. And, there was somebody who asked me about what my top 5 favorite Nicktoons were, and I put in Ren and Stimpy, and maybe I'm kind of, thinking about maybe changing my mind on that. No, don't get me wrong, I still love Ren and Stimpy. I'll probably still have it on my top 10 or something, but maybe my top 5, maybe because I was so turned off by seasons 4 and 5, maybe I'll have to reconsider. But then again, I'll have to rewatch all the Nicktoons again to see what my stance is.
By the way, here's what he said. I belong here. I'm not going to go with a corporation that takes people's creations away from them. Ironic that he said that back in 1992. And right now, guess what he's working on?
SpongeBob.
Yeah. How weird is that?
Yeah, well, time can change people, that's for sure. I think we can start slowly closing things off with a more positive note. I want to talk about 2 things. The last time that we were discussing about Ren and Stimpy was when we were doing Nick Smisel 3 about the canceled Ren and Stimpy movie. And I was talking about Cans Without Labels, which was John K's Kickstarter cartoon that he wanted to do. Apparently, there were a lot of leaks online of the clips of Cans Without Labels, and I watched them together. And overall, it definitely feels like a John K. cartoon, that's for sure. Has anybody seen that?
Yep, I have.
No.
It feels it feels kind of like the first 2 seasons of Ren and Stimpy, but just a bit ruder.
Very ruder, that's for sure. They swear, first of all. And another
basically, I'd go ahead.
You mean
and
adult party cartoon?
No, I'd say it's PG-13 type content.
Yeah, PG-13 content, not rated R content like adult party cartoon. But okay. Yeah, I mean, you do see the staples of John K. characters. You see Cigarettes the Cat. You see George Liquor. You see his nephews, and there's a Donald Duck parody character called Donald the Bastard.
Oh dear.
And he's a godly one.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I'll let you see that at one point. I'll let you see it in Antoni, so I won't spoil anything. But yeah, I finally did see the unfinished Cans Without Labels cartoon, and
okay, Cans Without Labels. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the name of the show? Okay.
It was the name of a cartoon that John K. kickstarted back in 2013, and it's still not finished, but there have been clips of it online that were leaked whenever John K. went off to do a panel for a convention, or whenever he did, like, lectures with college students about art or something.
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason why it hasn't been completed is because John K's been sidetracked with a lot of things. I mean, he's had to work with Miley Cyrus on The Simpsons couch gags, the UFC shorts.
Mm-hmm.
And just recently, John K. has started a new company
called John K Studios. But is it basically kind of like a revival of SpongeBob under a different name?
That's pretty much what it is. And I guess now is a better time that we discuss about this, James, because we didn't discuss about it in our Rocko's Modern Life podcast. There's going to be a new Ren and Stimpy short airing on the 3rd SpongeBob movie.
Oh, wow.
This really surprised me because I didn't think that Nick would hire him again. Bob Cant says Ren and Stimpy is the only show that he doesn't, and that is the only Nicktoon that they're apparently not bringing back.
But now they're bringing it back for a short instead of a TV movie like Hey Arnold or Rocko's Modern Life.
Yeah.
So yeah, this should be really interesting, and it's completely full circle because a lot of the people who worked on Ren and Stimpy went off to do SpongeBob, and now they're having a SpongeBob movie showcasing a Ren and Stimpy short.
Right.
I think it's honestly impressive, and I can't wait for it. I've seen some animatics for what was going to be before the first SpongeBob movie, and it's pretty funny actually. It has Stimpy and Sven in it.
Maybe it will be that same one, or maybe they'll do a completely different one. Who knows?
Actually, do you want to know what John K. actually revealed during the NSC festival? That he didn't really want to do adult party cartoon.
Oh, really? Mm. So what's the story behind that?
He said that he didn't really want to do them at the NSC festival, and revealed about how there was almost a SpongeBob, and almost a shot before SpongeBob water.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because I know that John K. did have a lot of cartoons, had a lot of episodes that were either cut or were on the background that he wanted to do in the earlier run but never did. Like, Fire Dogs 2 was supposed to be in the original run, Ren Seeks Help was supposed to be in the original run, and then there were a lot of others that just never happened. But it's funny the way that he would say that he never wanted to do adult party cartoon, because John K. would be the kind of person who would want to stick it to Nickelodeon saying, yeah, you know all that stuff that I couldn't do back then? Well, I'm doing it now. Take that.
Yeah.
Well, it was Spike TV that pretty much asked him to make it raunchy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
but I also... Yeah.
Go ahead.
But also, when I watched a couple of episodes of Adult Party Cartoon on Kids Cartoon, just to prepare for my review, or more appropriately, my mega rant on that thing, I saw an interview of John K., and he looked rather unenthusiastic, and he's trying to act a little bit enthusiastic, but it's clear that he was kind of burnt out, kind of unmotivated, and you could definitely see it in his tone of voice, and you could definitely see that in his eyes.
Where did you see that?
I forgot which episode. I think it was episode 4 of the Adult Party cartoon.
You mean the Fire Dogs?
I think so. But I'm not so sure which one, because I'm trying to bury those memories as much as I can. But I think it was episode 4. Or maybe it was like the episode where Ren and Stimpy encounter all these beach girls. Yeah, I think it was one of them.
Anyway, but beside that, John K. always seemed like the kind of guy who always wants to try new things. I mean, you can definitely tell when he talks about animation and he talks about the expressiveness of how cartoons are. I mean, I know he wants to experiment and I know he wants to try new things, but the problem is that he wants to focus on his fan base as opposed to a general fan base that he was able to gain from Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I remember this one interview that someone did for, Sick Little Monkeys, in which it's like, John K. wants to focus on, like, his core fans, but then again, he seems to miss out on all the other fans that are out there that, he doesn't really seem to consider. But all the fans want to see Ren and Stimpy, and when he does something, everybody else is going to just be reviled on it, or then the hardcore fans will just defend it and they'll eat it up. I mean, John K. has tried to do other projects, and pretty much a lot of them didn't succeed. I mean, even though that some of them were ahead of their time, like, James and I, we briefly discussed about the goddamn George Liquor Show, which was the very first animated web series made in Flash.
And don't forget Ripping Friends.
Yeah, and Ripping Friends as well, yeah.
What did you think of that?
I mean, I only seen, like, bits and pieces of Ripping Friends because I've been hearing a lot about it, but apparently from what I read in Sick Little Monkeys, he wasn't really too involved in the Ripping Friends because he was focusing on doing all this online content. He did,
I think it kind of shows that he wasn't really that involved with it.
Yeah, and also, he was doing a lot of freelance stuff, like he did that music video for Bjork, if anybody remembers that.
I miss you.
Yeah, I haven't met you yet.
Yeah, that's the one. I haven't met you yet.
Yeah, that took him like a whole year to do that music video. So, anyway, yeah, I guess that his other priorities were into other things, and the Ripping Friends was just like one of those background things that he let all the other animators do, and it wasn't up to his expectations. And even John K. himself will not talk about the Ripping Friends because he was so embarrassed with it.
Wow.
At least from what I read in the book. I've only seen bits and pieces of the Ripping Friends, and it's... I mean, it's not that good, but... I mean, it does feel like John K., but it doesn't really feel like John K. It's kind of hard to explain. Well, have you seen it?
Only bits and pieces of it.
Mm-hmm.
Especially from with Mr. Enter's top 10 worst cartoons of the 2000s.
Really? He ranked that as a worst cartoon of the 2000s, huh?
I think so, yeah.
Interesting.
Ripping Friends.
All right then. Well, you learn something new every day. Anyway, so I don't want to end on a sour note. Let's end on a more happier note. So
yeah, exactly.
So the Legacy of Ren and Stimpy. I mean, what do you take from it when watching it, and how it impacted animation?
Well, for me, it was very much a stepping stone for all of these surreal type of animation shows and animated installments to delve on the creative, the weird, and the in-your-face, and even to just show how insane and how surreal the world of animation can be. And I can give Ren and Stimpy a hell load of credit for that.
I second Antoni's opinions on the series. I think that it opened the door to a lot of more creators-driven cartoons and allowed artists to take control of the cartoon rather than being manufactured to sell toys. And without it, Lord knows how bland animation would be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely have to say the same, in which it was able to inspire a lot of other creator-driven cartoons. It was able to inspire so many animators that even work in today's cartoons. Like, Pendleton Ward says that he was inspired a little bit of Ren and Stimpy when doing Adventure Time, and all the other online cartoons. You get to see like their influences in which they try to be all dark, and they have a surreal, crazy style in their presentation. A lot of the sure, it did include some gross out moments, sure, but I feel that a lot of the stuff that they were able to get away with was able to basically just smash censorship in animation, and then it pretty much led up to a whole bunch of cartoons that had like those really sneaky innuendos, like Animaniacs and like Rocko's Modern Life, in which they were able to have a whole bunch of jokes that kids would not get, but adults would absolutely go crazy for. And then, of course, it would lead up to, in a way, adult cartoons. Before adult cartoons existed, like Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and before South Park, before Beavis and Butthead, Ren and Stimpy was the one that drew in college students to watch it, it drew in adults to watch it, it drew in kids to watch it, so it showcases that, animation is not a kid thing. It can be an everyone thing. Ren and Stimpy has become like a massive stamp of our staple in our pop culture with the Nicktoons. When you think of Doug and when you think of Rugrats, you also have to put in Ren and Stimpy in there, because Ren and Stimpy was the one that pretty much branched out into what gave Nickelodeon its identity for a long time. And without Ren and Stimpy, we wouldn't have SpongeBob.
Exactly.
Or pretty much every most cartoons out there.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I think we could wrap up this episode. So, Antoni, why don't you plug and promote your stuff?
Hey guys, Antoni here, and if you want to check out my channel, it's basically Antoni Garcia. I specialize on doing reviews of opera productions, albums, concerts, anime, cartoons, and movies, and I'm also an actor, so you could also check out some material that I have in my acting years, and a lot of other stuff in general, and a lot of other stuff related to music I also recorded, so feel free to check out all the content that I have to offer for you guys.
All right, awesome.
And I'm on Patreon.
Oh, and support him on Patreon.
Exactly. It's I'm on Patreon, and I'm under Antoni Reviews, Opera, and many other stuff.
All right, awesome. And that is it for our themed month of discussing about the 3 original Nicktoons. Again, I'm very sorry that it taken so long for us to do Ren and Stimpy. I went through a lot of personal issues, and I hope that the wait was worth it. So we hope to see you in the next episode, so thank you for listening.
Oh, okay, and you can even find me on Patreon as Antoni Garcia, so yeah.
All right, so catch you later.